Hello everyone, so it's been a while since I made any videos about this tropical paludarium, and quite a few of you have actually been asking how this aquarium is doing and whether the background is still holding together. So I thought it's a good time to make some basic update and to take you through all the changes that have taken place over the last probably a month and a half since I've last made any videos about this system. And there were quite a few of design related changes and planting related changes. Not so many changes in terms of the population, which I will talk about later on, but I will start with a sort of an overview of what's happening in here. So basically, in terms of equipment, I've added two more lamps like this, two LED lamps on the sides to add more light. These are the cheapest single color LED lights I could find from All Ponds Solutions, and the lamp in the back is a Haiger lamp, which is relatively powerful multi-spectre LED light, aquarium LED light, and it has been here for quite a while, so there was no change in terms of that lamp. But these extra lamps, I believe they provide more lighting, and now winter is approaching quite fast, so there will be a need for more light. The other reason why I added more light is because I've added more plants actually. So I'll start with this corner, with this part of the tank. If you remember how this corner looked previously, it didn't look like much. This fern, it was growing here as epiphyte, and it is still here. I've added here this bromeliad. I don't know which species is it because I bought it at a local terrarium shop, but it's quite colorful. It has some red on it, and also growing as epiphyte. Seems to be doing quite well for now. Red mangroves are still here, and well, they're slow growers, but they're doing more or less okay. Parlor palm recently started growing actively. There are some new fresh leaves here in the back. And probably the major change that I've added to this corner is this group of Echinodorus argentinensis. I've added more substrate to sort of create this elevation type of area. And I've planted here about, I think there's 6 or 7 plants of this Echinodorus argentinensis. This is what I basically wanted to achieve in this corner, to have this some sort of a river slope with immersed growth that comes out from water and breaks the water surface. It's actually quite difficult to find good quality Echinodorus argentinensis these days, at least here in the UK. So I've done quite a lot of search and quite a lot of research before I could find these plants, and I bought them on eBay, and they arrived perfect quality. You can see the leaves looking great. Well, now some of the leaves are going yellow. You can see this here because these plants have been obviously growing immersed in a nursery somewhere in Thailand or in Southeast Asia, and now I'm growing them sort of half immersed. So what I'm expecting is that they will lose most of these leaves, and the new growth will pop up, and it's actually happening. This is a new leaf. It's still underwater, but I'm hoping that as more and more leaves emerge, they will sort of break the water surface and will start to grow immersed, and eventually I will have all this part of the tank covered with this beautiful Echinodorus plants. At least this is a plan for now. Well, in here I have this tiger lotus lily, which just recently started growing. Moving on, moss wall here doing amazing. You can see how lush this moss is here. It gets enough water and it's growing great. When it comes to Hydrocotyle tripartita, which is most of these small little plants, I've done a few trims, major trims to them, because at some point they were becoming completely uncontrollable. There were so much of it all over the place, above water, underwater, and now I'm kind of keeping it contained to this area here. That's not sort of the final format of how I want them to grow, but for now this seems to be working. I like this small sort of island in here. It's a mixture of Bacopa caroliniana growing immersed and Hydrocotyle tripartita. There is also a solo red mangrove. It was actually before in that corner over there, but it didn't get enough light, so I moved it in here. And yeah, I've added some pieces of driftwood. This is mostly spider wood to the top part of the tank because it provides a very good growing, spreading out area for Hydrocotyle tripartita, and they seem to be making use of it currently in here. You can see they're just spreading out. Well, here in the center I've got some Hydrocotyle Leucocephala or Brazilian pennywort growing partly immersed. I used to have tons of it in this corner, but I removed it. And in here I have sort of an elephant in the room, a massive red tiger lotus lily. I actually trimmed some of the larger leaves because they were enormous and they were blocking the light to this tiny little Cryptocorini vendi. So yeah, this tiger lotus is doing just great in here. Obviously I'm adding some root fertilizers and clay balls to the substrate in order to make it grow so actively, and to be honest, I've allowed it to hit the surface, and at which point the leaves become just green with basically no markings on them. Well, there are some markings on fresh leaves because this is a fresh leaf, this is an older leaf, and I don't really like it. I prefer it to be this reddish when it stays underwater, so I will be trimming all new leaves to make sure that it only stays underwater and that it produces red leaves. Alright, moving on. We have here two really successful red mangroves. They are branching out and they are doing great actually. Obviously it has taken them ages to reach to this size. They're about a year and a half old. I bought them a year and a half ago, but obviously they're probably older than that. More Bacopa caroliniana in here growing immersed and more Hydrocotyle tripartita growing immersed. I don't allow Hydrocotyle tripartita to move beyond this point, so I will be trimming it constantly to keep it contained here. And here I have actually an exposed part of my moss wall, and you can see that moss is doing amazing when immersed. There are at least 4 or 5 species of aquatic moss in here. Christmas moss being the most dominant one, but there are also spiky moss, Taiwan moss, I can't remember what else, but actually quite a collection of mosses. They are doing great. They're also growing underwater. I'll try to film it actually, but it's sort of a bit more difficult to... Oh, that's too much reflection. But it's certainly spreading underwater, because initially I only planted it above water, but now it's going down, just like with all of these plants. Well, in this corner here I have one of my favorite plants, Cabomba aquatica. And I planted it in here. Well, obviously it breaks all the aquascaping rules and so on. I planted it right in the front to cover that sponge filter which is in the back, because the sponge filter gets covered with all sort of muck and it just doesn't look good. So I thought I'd cover it with something, and I did. So yeah, I absolutely love how this Cabomba looks like, which is one of my favorite plants throughout my aquarium hobby. And I'll say a couple of words about equipment. Well, these are the LED lamps, 3 of them, 2 smaller ones and 1 longer. They currently, well, previously there wasn't enough light, but now they provide sufficient amount of light. There are 2 other pieces of equipment on this tank. This power head, which you can see here. There are two connections to this power head. From one end, it basically pushes water, creating this sort of a ripple effect, which saturates water with oxygen, creates all this surface agitation. And there's no other sources of oxygen, there are no air stones or anything like that. Well, it has a second extension, what sort of a second output, which is connected to this pipe here, and this pipe feeds the drip wall system that basically pushes water all the way through the tank until that part in here. Well, it's not powerful enough to push water equally through all the length of the tank, so up to here, where in here I can see that water underneath the moss is still dropping quite actively, but as it reaches here, the flow becomes weaker, so these plants don't get as much water, which is great because they don't need constant flow of water, and I'm spraying them occasionally, but that's all they need. Well, yeah, so this power head is connected to a massive sponge that goes all the way to the bottom, and that's basically the only form of filtration that I have on this tank, and it is actually quite sufficient. I would normally take out the sponge about once per week or whenever it gets clogged, and I'll wash it. And that's the only type of maintenance that I'm doing on this tank currently. There is a heater here in the back, that's Haiger digital heater, that's its control panel in here, which works quite great. I keep the temperature at 25 degrees constant. And previously, focusing. Previously, I used to do weekly water changes on this tank, about 50% per week, just to make sure that nitrogen cycle kicks in, and it was still a fresh system. Now it's almost a year old, not a year old because I set it up in December last year, so approaching 1 year. And now it's a far more stable system and it doesn't require any water changes, so I stopped doing water changes. Obviously I'm topping up water as it evaporates, and it evaporates quite actively because it's an open top tank. But no water changes. I'm checking water parameters weekly, and everything stays, well, nitrates are actually at about like 10 ppm. Which is great because I have a lot of plants. I don't fertilize them. I am adding some fertilizer clay balls, and I don't have root pellets actually, but just clay balls and some other forms of clay fertilizers for ponds. I found them quite useful when it comes to this hungry plants, nutrient hungry plants like Echinodorus and or water lilies. So I'm using basically fertilizers for pond lilies, and they work great. These plants absolutely enjoy them, and they're also way cheaper than aquarium fertilizers. So that's basically it in terms of the plant life. Well, when it comes to fish population, well, the only major change that occurred in here is actually a negative change. I've lost my group of Brochis multiradiatus. I had 6 of them, and all of a sudden, all of them developed some sort of a bacterial infection. So they were covered with some sort of a white velvety fungus, which looked like something related to white spot or velvet, and I've treated them with 3 different medicines consecutively, high quality medicines over a period of 2 months. Unfortunately, they didn't make it. None of these medicines worked, and I lost all of them one by one. The strange thing is that no other fish was affected, and no other fish was lost or had any signs of disease, so that's strange. And at that time, I didn't introduce anything new to this system, no new plants, no new fish, so I have no idea where did this disease come from, and but yeah, this is sad development. But other than that, everyone else is alive and doing great. For those of you who haven't seen my videos about this fish tank before, I have basically 3 types of fish in here. This is a broadly defined South American community, so I have carotins represented by cardinal tetras. I have 3 species of Nanostomus or pencilfish, zooming in on some of them. Nanostomus equus, which you can see right now. Lots of Nanostomus beckfordi, which I've bred myself mostly. And Nanostomus marginatus, trying to find at least one of them, not that easy. That's it in terms of carotins. I have here about 6 species of Corydoras, mostly hiding. There's some Corydoras duplicareus, some of them are part of my breeding group, others. Oh, and I also have here 2 glow light tetras which are left from one of the other tanks. They're quite old. Yeah, about 6 species of Corydoras. This is duplicareus. In the back you can see Corydoras concolor, well, Hoplysoma concolor. They're not called Corydoras anymore. And yes, most of the Corydoras are quite shy and secretive, so they would come out only later on in the evening or once the lights are off. There's some Corydoras Aeneus Trinidad, wild-caught bronze coris, my breeding group in here, and more duplicareus. Actually, duplicareus are the bravest among other Corydoras. I also have here 2 species of dwarf cichlids. I have here quite a lot of dwarf flagacaras. Some of them are adults, others are juveniles who were born in my fish room, but as it goes with dwarf flagacaras, they are extremely shy, and it's really difficult to spot them unless it's feeding time. And I have here 2 females of wild-caught Microgeophagus ramirezi or ram cichlids, but they are also extremely shy and secretive. I rarely see them, but they're still here and they're alive, and they're quite large and chunky actually. Unlike farmed ram cichlids, they're quite hardy, and they thrive at 25 degrees Celsius actually. Well, normal farm-bred ram cichlids would have been dead long ago, but these ones are doing great. So yeah, in terms of the fish population, lots of small fish. No plans to add anybody else in here, at least for now. I think everything is quite harmonious in here. No aggression and no active breeding either, which is fine by me because I don't expect fish in this fish tank to breed actively. In here I have quite a collection of pots. These are Cariniana pots, which I absolutely love because they last forever, unlike a lot of other botanicals. Most of these Cariniana pots are either 1 or 1.5 or 2 years old, so it takes them ages to break down and fall into pieces. In the back, hard to see, there are quite a few of coconut shells, which I also absolutely love as form of pots because they last forever. There are more Cariniana pots in here in the back. They serve as perfect hiding spots for smaller catfish and for dwarf cichlids. For example, my smaller Corydoras always hide in there, and dwarf flagacaras are living in there. So yeah, I absolutely adore this form of botanicals. Some alder cones spread around the tank. It is not a black water system currently because I'm far too lazy to maintain it as a black water, which would require sort of more efforts on my part. So it's mostly a clear water system, but certainly prospering and doing great. Well, in terms of coconut fiber performance underwater, well, it's almost impossible to film it because of the way lighting works. But it's actually doing quite well, and it's holding on and it's sort of sticking to the background as it did on day 1. No, it's just impossible to see it. But yeah, overall, the drip wall and the background, they function well. No complaints. at this point. And yes, this system is just becoming more and more mature, which is what I like about it, and I really look forward to develop it into something even more mature over the years to come. So no plans to break it down, no plans to make any changes to it. I think it's quite perfect, at least for me, the way it is. I will be adding probably occasionally some new plants, not new fish, but maybe some new plants, because when it comes to the plant life, some plant species thrive, others not so much, and sometimes I like experimenting with new plants. I like adding new plants instead of something that may not be doing quite well. A bit of a side view. Now, you can see here actually this is mostly sphagnum moss, well, a species of sphagnum moss, and it's growing quite well as some sort of a substrate for the fern, and the fern is basically attached to the background and it grows covered by sphagnum moss in here. And yeah, basically that's what it is for now, and that's sort of a relatively long update, but I hope you've enjoyed it. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. There will be more videos about breeding fish, which I'm doing currently in my fish room, and of course more videos about this paludarium. If you have any questions about this system or any questions about maintaining a paludarium, feel free to ask them. I'll reply them as soon as I can, and I'll see you soon.